Paulians, is that what they're called?
Pauline's.
Oh, it's quite good.
The Parlours. Okay, guys, we're live. This is episode 1.
Yes. Welcome.
Introduce the show.
Welcome, boys. This is the first episode of Yak Chat 2020.
Let's get a round of applause, everyone.
Yes. Woo! Thanks, boys. Thank you. Cheers, everyone. Thanks.
Who have we got in the studio, Joe?
Today we've got the big H, Harry, and next to him we've got what? I didn't even clock.
Nothing.
We've got Big S, Big Sammy, and in the background we've got Newt. Right, so last year, big year, last year of the decade. A lot of shit happened. It got worse as the year went on. 2020 is a new start though, a new year. Politics hasn't finished just because it made me depressed for a little while. But no, it's true though. It took me, honestly, it took me a good couple of weeks to get over it. Like literally get over it. I couldn't even talk about it. I couldn't think about it. But it sort of puts into perspective how much of a snowflake I think we actually all are, because you sort of see other people in Parliament say the man himself, Big Corb's, been doing it for 40 years. We back him for 4 years, and now we've all given up on politics because he lost.
Alright, so let's break it down a bit. So
yeah,
we got Labour coming in with Jez's second election,
the second coming
test. The second coming of Corbyn Rice. Yeah, and he fucked up a bit. Well, when I say fucked up, I mean he just lost by quite a lot.
Yeah. Tragically.
So as a Corbyn supporter, I'm going to be indifferent in this conversation.
Yeah.
But as a Corbyn supporter, what do you think went wrong? Why do you think he didn't come out on top like you felt like he should have?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the biggest thing was the Brexit policy. If you look at the seats that Labour lost, 52 of the 54 were leave voting seats. And what has changed in our country a little bit over the last sort of 20 years is where populations are. So take somewhere like Brighton, it's a student-y city town. London is full of young people. Back home, where everyone's actually from, that's where their parents live, their grandparents live. But these towns don't have their own economies anymore. There isn't industries, so people move to cities to get jobs. Hence why Corbyn didn't actually lose a lot in regards to the popular vote. The percentage of the vote wasn't that different. He still got more votes than Blair did when he won. Got more votes than Gordon Brown, more votes than Miliband, but they lost more seats than anyone.
Well, that's the thing. I saw. I think it was like a diagram or something, and it was like, if we had proportionate representation, then Labour would have had about a third of the seats in the country.
Yeah, it would have been a minority government, not a majority.
I think Lib Dems would have had a good 20 seats or something, but they only ended up with 1.
Well, yeah, that's it.
UKIP party, I think, would have had 3 or something, and
yeah. So
it's like with the voting system we've got, it seems like a lot of people are putting in a lot of time and effort into, say, like a political party that a lot of people clearly agree with, because if people didn't agree with them, then proportionally they wouldn't have won a seat. Do you know what I mean? But clearly a lot of people do. But now these parties aren't getting a look in just because of the way the voting system's set up. What do you think about that?
It's a difficult one, because as much as I would suggest that it goes to popular vote, it would then create a whole new conversation of how would Parliament work? Would it just be the 100 most popular from each party if they got 100? Sort of how would you divvy it up? It's very easy for us to divvy it up when we can compare it to constituencies. So as much as, Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote in America
Oh,
by
really?
over 2 million votes, but
Oh,
lost. And I mean, I don't really like Hillary
Yeah,
Clinton in
fuck
particular.
Hillary.
Fuck the Clintons,
Fuck
innit?
Hillary.
Fuck the Clintons, like all day. But yeah, it's a difficult one because like you say with the vote share, if over 45s, but the only people that voted, Tories would have like 400 seats and Labour would have like 5. But if only under 45s voted, the Tories would have hardly any seats, and the whole country would have been Labour, including Scotland, Wales, Ireland, all of it.
Well, a lot of the older voters say that the reason younger voters find Labour more appealing is because,
Free stuff.
well, sort of that, but it's that the older generation has seen what socialism has done to the country beforehand. Obviously, Labour created the NHS, I'm pretty sure, didn't they?
Yeah.
Labour created the NHS, and then so it's like that one was good, like the one after the war, but then the ones following 70s and all that, they didn't really go so well. And so the older generation's now looking at that being like, oh well, if I vote bloody Corbyn and that, then it's just going to happen all over again.
70s, yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, me personally, I think it's a conversation that can be had, but it's like because of
It's
the way
become a culture war,
information,
innit?
well, the way information's exchanged now with the internet, it's not so extreme socialist now. It's a bit more like, oh, what, we can actually care for homeless people. Do you know what I mean? It's more things like that rather than give everyone.
Yeah, there's a
50
big
quid each.
historical context, because the more extreme right sort of look at medieval times and think like, it fucking worked perfectly back then. Why can't we still have peasants and shit? And you can afford, like, when capitalism was first getting thought of, it didn't work in that current climate. And then there came a time when capitalism made the most sense. In my opinion, we're at that point now. Like, you can say all you want about how you believe the free market should control this and control that, but the free market has stopped us addressing the environmental issues. It's made more inequality since the 70s to now, with like neoliberalism sort of thing, Thatcher, the Clintons, Ronald Reagan, etc., all that sort of shit. Modern capitalism that doesn't actually work. But that's my point, is socialism wasn't so necessary when it was, not to sound like a fucking idiot, but like, it's sort of about saving the planet and shit now. So the conversation should move away from like, well, I don't think that should happen, I don't think this should happen. It's kind of getting to the point where what you're suggesting isn't going to help us when we come towards this catastrophic event. The only people offering that is this. So it kind of has to be the way forward. We need to sort of think about it a little bit more like we are the only tribe of humans, and we are all sitting around a campfire thinking, what the fuck are we going to do?
Well, saving the planet doesn't make the rich richer. It makes the rich poorer. Doesn't it?
And that narrative is sort of the prevailing one, because everybody that's on the news is a million times more likely to be rich than the average Joe. And I mean, I will add some context. Like when you say about the 70s, and this is a good point to make, is if you ask the average over 45 in this country who caused the financial crash, they'll say it's Labour, even though we all lived through it, and that isn't what happened. You ask people what happened in the 70s, and I talk to people all the time, 9 times out of 10, they don't know that we were under sanction from Arab oil. Basically, Canada, France, UK, and America, maybe a couple other countries as well, were being sanctioned by Arab oil. Arab oil controlled pretty much all of the oil at that point because of our support for Israel. So it's like when people sort of mention Venezuela and things like that, and Iran, etc. You've got to add in the context that when someone's being economically sanctioned, that will ruin the economy, no matter who's in charge. Capitalists can't make money with oil if there isn't any. Do you know what I mean? And as much as I do get that sort of like I do understand the negative connotations with socialism. I do understand why it's not for everybody. Like, I'm not like a total 1000% socialist and that. But at the same time, a lot of the context and a lot of the things older people throw back to in our country is straight up factually incorrect. And it's almost as true to say that the Tories have always got in power through making up a lie about Labour and the economy. So what you said is right, and they are right as well, the people that hark back to the 70s, I'm glad I didn't live through it, innit? Like, it must have been shit. Like, you got some unions demanding like £25 an hour as the economy's collapsing and shit. Like, a lot of stupid shit went on. But I could sit here for 3 hours and reel off all the stupid things people have done under capitalism, but would anyone be able to use that as an argument against capitalism? No. But one thing goes wrong with socialism, and that's it. Oh no, that's a stupid idea. Like, capitalism's killed more people than Stalin did, and he purposefully killed people. Do you know what I mean? Systematic and with a smile isn't always better than... I mean, I don't want Stalin, I don't want it to come across like that, innit? I'm not a communist. But I think the conversation needs to... It almost needs to be taken out of these people's hands, innit? Like...
Yeah, I mean, this was... Because we were talking about right-wing and left-wing earlier.
Yeah.
And I was saying how I don't like the fact that we're constricted to each side of a wing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It gives you a limited amount of space. Like, why can't we move elsewhere with it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's, well, because we've got a lot of two-party systems going on in both America and England. Well,
yeah.
Because that's the only two countries we can really... Well, most people in England can relate to.
Yeah. It's the closest.
Yeah.
It's the sister.
So they've just got a two-party system, and it's got to the point where it's like... They're now both so powerful in their own way.
They almost don't have to listen.
Yeah, like, are we ever going to get out of it?
Yeah. I think...
It needs a revolution, but everyone's being pacified now. We're all such passive people now. Like you look at videos of like just rallies that went on in the 30s and 40s and stuff, and you look at the amount of people that are there, and you're like how many people would turn up nowadays?
Bro, our parents are the first generation to never have to go out and fight for something, and they take that out on us. They didn't live up to their parents who had to fight in wars and fight for the right to not have to work 12-hour shifts as a child in a factory, etc., etc. All of these, I will add, socialist causes. We don't have that socialist movement that is just there constantly, always on the street, always fighting for people's rights, making sure that don't get taken the piss out of. Our parents didn't bother with that because they was told that no, you don't fuck all this unionising and unity. If you unionise, you miss out. As a collective, it's all about individualism. You just go to... Don't worry about everyone else's issue. If you go to work and just shut up, get on with it, go home, you'll get a house, you'll get a mortgage, and everything will be alright. One day you'll be middle class. And that's completely fucked up though, because again, it makes us pacifists. We didn't grow up with our parents saying like, you fight fucking tooth and nail for what you believe in. It's you stand up for what you believe in. You just stand up and wait for somebody else to take the lead. Yeah. And I noticed that, I think that's another, like you said, what Labour's biggest problems with losing is that all of the right side of the party, the older sort of 40 plus white people, not to generalise and that, they are the people that go to the meetings. They are the people that actually turn up and do everything else, rather than like the socialists, the younger people usually, are doing it all on the internet. So it has no real effect. Like, you can fucking petition all you want. You can go on Twitter and think, fucking hell, how did Boris Johnson get in? Everyone hates him. But they're not changing anybody else's opinions.
Yeah, they're just typing and then going to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's it. And we've lost that, like, actual physical movement. And...
I mean, I don't want it to sound too much like, you know, the Queen's a lizard kind of conspiracy, but maybe they're trying to sort of push it that way so it actually completely prevents any sort of
Well,
uprising.
this is it. This is the first time in human history where a government can bring in a new law that's negative, and people will say, "Oh, that's just the way it is."
Yeah.
No, it weren't, because it's a new law. But that has changed. The way it isn't like, it's become like, oh no, we just get punished by our governments. Do you know what I mean? They fuck up the economy and then they bail out all the banks with our money, and we end up with stagnated wages and shit. That's just the way it is. Like, no, that was like more for like when the winters were really cold and you had to sort of be like, it's just the way it is, we've got to get through it. Not like our masters punish us. That's just the way it is. Like, just because that battle's never ended doesn't mean that people weren't always fighting that battle. We've stopped fighting that battle. We're like, and to take it away from like socialist movements and shit, like just in general, like you see like the Iraq War. I think that was the last sort of that was the last bit of pulp in the orange. 1 million people out on the streets protesting Iraq, but it happened anyway. And I feel like that was the bottom line, and people were just like, that's the way it is. There's nothing we can do, just focus on making your life all right.
Well, that's the thing, because we've got all these social medias that are promoting the mindset of obviously being successful, having the nice car, the nice girl, whatever, that it does lead to that mentality where you are concentrating more on yourself than the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But then it's good that we have things like this, like podcasts, that you can actually have this conversation and spread it out. And because I don't think enough people are having the conversation about how pacified people are becoming.
People
people really underestimate how much the internet is impacting all of us. Like, even look at how like TV kind of affected everyone in the early 2000s. Like, everyone was zombies. Do you know what I mean? And then now it's turning into going from don't sit too close to the TV 3 meters away to now having some glasses with a fucking screen on them. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. Crazy. Should probably avoid swearing. So YouTube are gonna fucking.
We need to. We'll come up with a cool beep or something.
Yes, Scoop.
It was noise from earlier, wasn't it?
Yeah. And but I think another good example is like in the 70s, if the government, or 70s, 80s, whatever, maybe the 80s was like the last dying embers of like real people movements. Is if the government started sending random people home because of the Windrush generation. No, but if the government started sending people from the Windrush generation home in the 70s or 80s, random countries. I mean, there was even a fucking white British kid that got a letter about, and they was threatening to send him to a country that he'd never been to in his life.
Oh wow!
If that happened in the 70s and 80s, people would have marched on Parliament. There'd have been riots in the sort of more populated by minorities areas. But now something happens and a hashtag starts. Not a movement, not an attack on that business, not a threat to these people's money. A hashtag. We think that cancelling people works.
Oh yeah, it doesn't.
It don't fucking work.
People are still playing R. Kelly songs.
Bro, it turns them into something bigger than they were. Almost a bit like a martyr. And yeah, it's tricky because half of me sort of thinks like no one's got it in them anymore, so what's the point? But I don't think I could go to bed and sleep right if I decided in my head that working class struggle's over, sorry about racism, sorry about inequality, that's just our government, lads. Do you know what I mean? Like, I do feel like we sort of have got a bit of a responsibility still, and the one promising thing is the climate protests. As much as we can go into the background to all that sort of shit, and if it's dodgily funded, and if it's just basically a new version of green capitalism that isn't going to help anyone.
Well, let me ask you something. So there's been what's their name?
Priti Patel.
No, what's that group? Extinction.
Extinction Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion. Yeah, so obviously they've been seen like disrupting commuters and all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
I mean, what's your kind of take on that? Do you think
Civil disobedience is the answer, but you don't go down to the fucking East End and do it whilst all of the normal people are trying to go home? Especially considering the protesters...
They're in Canning Town.
Exactly, that's what
Why-
I mean.
why
Like,
doing
they're
in
just
Canning
stopping
Town?
working people
Yeah.
earning their money, innit? Like, you kind of want to turn up at Westminster and do that, innit? Because you're only going to be fucking up people. The odd person might be late to the theatre, but most of the people there are the people you're trying to get the message across to. All that, like with that thing in Canning Town, all that's done is now turn all the working people against them,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And now you got... Because now you got, like...
Fighting from two fronts.
Yeah, exactly. Because now you've got even situations like... what's her name? Greta
Thunberg.
Yeah. She's spreading a positive message.
I think we're the first podcast in the world not to mock her.
Yeah, it's
for
like...
being a
Well, this is what I'm
little
saying.
girl.
Everyone's mocking her and that. You got the President of the United States mocking her because of this and that and the people behind her and whatever. But at the end of the day...
She's fucking
She's
right.
talking about saving the fucking planet.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
why?
The honour
How
has
are we
gone.
gonna sit there and slate a fucking? How old is she? Like
16 now. She's 16 now.
16. She's. I
So
think
she was
she's
14,
she's got
13 when it
Asperger's or
started.
she's
Yeah, she has
autistic.
got Asperger's,
yeah. She's doing all the. I get okay. There might be some dodgy people behind her. All right, cool.
Yeah.
If they're
That's
the
for another
problem,
pod.
if they're the coming
Like,
soon.
no, 'cause it's proper interesting.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. But like, if these people are so bad, why don't we put our energy into talking about why these people are bad and not just slate her?
Yeah.
Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, for one, she's a little girl.
That's
Like,
it.
why are we
We've
getting
got-
on her?
that's
She's
the
a
thing
little
though,
girl. And
we've-
secondly, the message is so needed.
You can't
and
argue with
You
it.
can't argue with it. She might get a little fact wrong here and there. She might use a fucking non-biodegradable plastic.
Yeah.
So do you.
Yeah.
So does
you
everyone.
can't not. That's why she's so desperate.
Yeah.
Because we're living in a world where just existing harms the environment, whether you like it or not.
Well, that's the thing. And now you've got these people coming on the socials and that being like, oh yeah, she's doing this and she's doing that. Like, she's not really helping. But
uppity, she's jumped up.
But like you said, we're brought up in an environment where, like, yeah, you got to get to work, and to get to work, you got to use petrol, and you got to
Yeah.
do this, and you got to do that, and if you want an electric car, you got to make money.
Yeah.
And, blah, blah. Do you know what I
And
mean?
I'll tell
Like,
you how we won't solve it: punching down at fucking 16-year-old girls.
No.
Like you say, we've got to start talking about the people behind her. If that's why you don't like her, you sort of got the responsibility to explain to your viewers why that's the reason why you don't like her.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, oh look, I'm a 16-year-old girl that thinks I know better than everybody else and shit. Because
yeah,
like,
that's a terrible argument.
but this is the thing. This is what I mean by, like, we've because of our, like, not our parents specifically, but that generation, is they've made punching down so much more like it's not like, how dare you do that to us? It's how dare you jump up and tell these masters how they should. You know what I mean? It's like, I see it and it just makes my stomach churn. And it honestly, like, anyone that tries to do anything for the work, I mean, Corbyn, perfect fucking example. The one thing you can't fuck about is that man's integrity, and that is the one thing that everyone is just throwing to the wind. And you think, like, and someone made a good point. I mean, I'm not likening him to fucking Jesus. I mean, even he'd laugh at that. But if Jesus came along now, people would just call him some crazy fucking social justice warrior, and no one would listen to him because they wouldn't like to be told what he's got to say. And yeah, it's proper weird now how, like, and you see it through, like, I mean, what can we expect from people like Piers Morgan and that? But Piers Morgan and people like that have such an influence, especially on, like, white British culture. And at the end of the day, 83% of the country is white and British, so they're always going to control the narrative when it comes to votes and shit. And so if we've got people like Piers and that playing up to that constantly, literally, like, mocking her Asperger's as well, saying she talks funny and that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, do you know what I mean? That's so fucking deep. You got some guy that got sacked from editing because he hacked dead girls' phones and shit. He put up fake images of, like, soldiers torturing people and that. And he's sitting there telling the entire nation not to fucking worry about climate change, but actually to just be pissed off that a little girl's talking about it. And everyone seems to just skirt away from the issue. And then when you do get them on it, it's, oh well, is it man-made or is it nature? Like, what does it? Why does it matter who made it? Doesn't it matter how many of us it's gonna kill?
Yeah.
Like, if we used a nuclear bomb on someone, they couldn't be like, oh, for fuck's sake, that bloody Germany who gave birth to that scientist that invented the atom bomb. No, like, it'd be our fault. But when it comes to social issues, it's weird. The blame game has got very odd, and people like Corbyn are being spent because of it, and the world doesn't have many people like that. And once people like Corbyn and Greta go away, we've only got the deniers, we've only got the people that don't really care about us and shit like that. And it does worry me how much, like I said, like particularly the white British working class, not the working class, because the working class actually voted more in favour of Corbyn, but the typical white British doesn't know fuck all about fuck all, but he reads the paper on his lunch. Like, they have such an alignment to sort of Boris Johnson and that, because they see people like that as more anti-establishment, because they're like anti-students. And people almost see like young protesters as the establishment and not like the policemen beating them up and shit. I don't know.
They see it as the, well, it's the snowflake. It's the snowflakes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone who's against. That's I mean that's one of the things that stood out to me the most during this election was how anyone who was like, I was having a few debates with like Conservative voters, and how whenever I'd say anything that was a bit like, do you know what I mean, on the side of socialism or against, I don't know, even just like Boris's racist comments and that, you get called a snowflake and that, and it's like the term snowflake is just as bad as the term as calling the other side. So people who are on the more social side calling the other side racists. And all this,
it's
and that's
go-to comebacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's easy, isn't it? Because they hear their parents say it.
Yeah, and do you know what? Is that it's been fueled to the point that traditionally, I mean, like historically, and especially in Britain as well, and this gets masked over in school, the news, everything. Like, England had a very sort of socialist a good, active socialist working class. We always did. They always fought for things. They were always the first country to introduce certain rights, etc. But now, they've managed to persuade the country not to bother about the class war. Like I said, that's just the way it is. Like, they're just gonna fuck us over, etc., etc. But what pisses me off is fucking students and their bloody vegan Gregs and things like that. And so people voted against Corbyn. They'd say it's because of the policies and that, but they didn't know fuck all about the policies, and I'm comfortable saying that. Fucking find me someone.
I'm gonna bait him out because he deserves it. Tom, who also has Tomcast, go check out Tomcast. But he's a bloody Tory, so I'm gonna tear him down. I'm having a discussion with him. It's a debate, and
they never want to talk facts. They just want to call you names and shit.
Well, I'm not gonna get into that, but he was talking to me about this and that and how Corbyn has neglected certain people and blah blah blah. But I asked him, I was like, do you actually know because he voted for Tory. He said he would have voted Labour, but he ended up voting. He was one of the people who switched. So, and he's our age as well, do you know what I mean?
You're a fucking class traitor. Dead serious, bro. Class traitor.
But he was I got him to do one of them policy tests, and it turned out he was more.
Yeah.
He was more of a Labour supporter than me.
He didn't read the Labour manifesto, because people always say it. Oh yeah, but what about the northern voters voted for Tory because there wasn't policies for them? It's just for the middle class champagne socialists. There wasn't one policy in there that bettered the middle class over the working class. The manifesto was actually going to bring industry back to the north and shit. Like, that's what fucked the north up. Having no jobs, no economy, no money. Labour offers that, and then they go, do you know what? Because Boris don't like brown people, I think he aligns with me a little bit more. And then they like, people sort of align themselves subconsciously with negativity, whether we like it or not. We do. Fear is a lot more powerful than positivity, and
100%.
the fear of Corbyn not doing it outweighed the fact that he was actually going to. Like, this is a guy, the only guy who's been pretty straight for 40 years, and yet everyone questioned his motives and no one else's, that change every week.
Well, how often did you hear the term, as long as it's not Corbyn?
Yeah, and
As
the
long as
news
it's not
started
Corbyn.
that. The news started that. That didn't come from people well thought out opinions.
Well, speaking of the news, because while we're deep into the politics and UK politics now, we might as well get into it. Like,
yeah, sorry.
Sorry,
happens
everyone.
when I'm about. It gets depressing.
What about? I mean, the BBC have kind of showed their true colours, and
Yeah.
well, maybe not show. Well, you could say show their true colours, but they kind of exposed
More
themselves
than
on
ever.
a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Like, maybe they haven't been. I can't say throughout the ages they've been.
they were
conservative or
definitely
whatever.
more balanced back in the day.
Yeah,
1,000%.
they probably were.
Yeah.
But like, and I'm not saying that they've always been conservative or whatever. But what we saw in this last election, that
Desperation.
there was an agenda.
Yeah.
There was 100% an agenda, to the point where you
can't argue that.
you got people like. Did Gary Neville say anything about the BBC? No, he didn't.
He said the media.
He said the media
is fueling.
But I
it
think
all.
he was probably.
Yeah. We know who he means.
Yeah. We know the real ones.
Big guys. No, big up Gary Neville. For
Yeah,
that.
big up.
It's
Yeah,
important.
He's the and do you know what? I think the fact that people like him are now coming out, where he appeals to the more just average person sitting there watching football on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And whatever.
Your normal
and
bloke.
he's gonna come out and be like, well, they are doing this, by the way.
Yeah.
And then you got like the presenter being like, oh no, these
That
aren't the views
doesn't
of Sky
represent the
Sports.
view- Oh my
And then it's
God, I
like,
couldn't
and
believe
then it's
that.
like,
He
wait,
said
hang on a sec.
racism's bad. Quick! We
Yeah,
don't know
not
if that's
Sky
true or
Sport.
not.
And he was
yeah.
like, what? So you don't agree? He was like, what? So you don't agree? I was like,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.